Okay. Good. You ready?
Yes. Yes. I'm trying upstairs to be a bad person for a minute.
Just for a
But
minute.
only for 1 minute, yeah. Yeah. Doesn't take me long.
Hang on a minute, hang on a minute, I'm just coming.
Because you're going to be a bad person, Rachel. That's what he's hoping. Okay, welcome, ladies and jelly spoons. Good to see you again. This is the first chance really that I've had to tell properly since I got here last Saturday.
Yes.
Because of all that's happened, it's been a bit of a nightmare. I don't know if you know, I got my bag stolen with my purse, my phone, my passport, everything. So I've spent the last, 3 days with my trusty mate here who's done everything for me online and what have you. I went to the passport office today and I got my passport.
Yay.
On the day that I asked for it, it's unheard of.
Yes.
But I was in good company. So anyway, I'm here now and I'm going to share a story with you. It's about compassion.
Oh, just a bit.
Can you not hear me properly?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
like very
the light.
light. Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe you should sit. Oh, yeah, for this.
Oh,
Okay,
definitely.
never mind.
not.
Good.
No,
I'll
have to
handle
be
it.
here.
I have a hat to fit in. Right. Right.
Are you ready? Actually, works. It hides half your face.
It what?
It works. It hides half your face.
I'm not sure.
You get used to it after a while.
All right. Anyway.
So anyway, the story that I'm going to share with you, and Momo and I are doing this session particularly on compassion. But compassion has two sides. It has those you should have compassion for, and those who do not deserve compassion because they don't get it. So when I finish the story, I would like you to tell me whether you think that was a story of compassion for someone who needed it or for someone who didn't have it. She was beautiful, this young woman. I mean, a beauty beyond compare. She lived in a Greek island, and as we know, Greek islands are all beautiful, and this village was no different. This particular village was absolutely stunning. They had one unusual feature. On the roadway up to the village, there was a huge puddle, and it was always there. No matter how many times they tried to get rid of this puddle, it came back. They hadn't seen rain for months. It was always there. And in the village where this young lady lived with her mother, she was well known, but for all the wrong reasons. She was vain, she was arrogant, she was all the things. If you had a daughter, you wouldn't want her to be like this. But she had such an incredible talent. Apart from being so stunningly beautiful, people would actually come to see her because her beauty was like, renowned. But she was the most incredible weaver. She could weave a tapestry and you would think that the characters in that tapestry could just step right out. It was so incredibly lifelike. And one day she was having a conversation with her mother in the kitchen. And she said to her mother, but you know I am the most beautiful. You know I am the finest weaver. And her mother says, you disturb me with your attitude. You have to be thankful for what you've got. You should be thanking God and saying, thank you for giving me these gifts. I don't believe in God. She said, all of that is nonsense. I was born beautiful and I was born with this talent. It's got nothing to do with God. And her mother said, oh, so you think it came from me? Well, no, because you don't have my beauty and you don't have my talent. I mean, this girl was incomparable. I have to tell you, incomparable. And she was ranting and raving about this. And I think I'm just as good as the gods. Why should I be any less? And unfortunately for her, Athena was listening. She stamped her feet in fury. Whatever does this girl think she's doing? Who does she think she is? This girl is intolerable. I will teach her a lesson. And the next morning, an old lady arrived at the village, and on her way up the road, she just leapt over that puddle as if it wasn't there, and she walked on and knocked on the door of this girl, whose name, by the way, was Ari, which was short for Ariana. And she knocked on the door, and Ari answered the door. Well, And Athena said, hello, you are Ari? Yes. I'd like to see your tapestries. Are you going to buy one? Well, I don't know. I would like to see them first. Have you got money? I will have money if I want to buy something. And her mother's behind her and she is mortified. And she comes forward and she says, Ari, behave. Invite this lady in. Don't be so rude. But she maybe won't buy anything in me. But she allows the old lady to come in. And Athena had to admit these tapestries were stunning, incredible, probably even equal to her own. Not better, of course, but probably equal. And she said this. This old lady standing there in front of that young girl said, oh, yes, your tapestries are probably as good as mine. As good as yours? You, old woman, as good as yours? Don't be ridiculous. Oh, so you don't think that anybody could compare to you? Certainly not. She said, well, I'll challenge you then. Oh, really? You'll be wasting your time. I have time, all the time in the world. I challenge you. Well, Athena was not letting this go. And neither was Ari. She didn't want to back down. So she said, okay, if you must, we'll have this challenge. But you're wasting your time, I tell you. So what do you want me to do? She said, well, I think we should make a tapestry of the gods. The gods. She said, you know what the gods look like, don't you? You've been brought up with these since you were a child. You have seen all the images. Yes. Is it too difficult? Of course not. No, I will do a depiction of the gods if that's what you want. Okay, in 3 days' time, we will meet back here with our tapestries and we'll let your mother be the judge. 3 days? Do you need 3 days? Are you that slow? Athena said, okay. Tomorrow we will return and we will compare. So the next day, Athena turns up with her tapestry and Ari has produced a tapestry overnight, which is just incredible. Except that when Athena sees it, she is absolutely outraged because this upstart of a girl has featured these characters, the gods, you know, all with strange big ears and pointed noses and hooked chins. You know, Zeus has a huge wart on his nose. It's just, they look funny, but nevertheless extremely, you know, incorrigible to do something like that with the gods. And Athena says, oh, you have overstepped the mark, my girl. I'm going to punish you. You are going to punish me? And Athena said, yes. I don't have cross eyes. Look closely. And the next minute, she was Athena. And that girl dropped to her feet and pled for forgiveness because she wasn't stupid, whatever else she was. And Athena said, too late. You have two wonderful gifts. You have your beauty and you have your weaving. I'm going to take one of them. Please don't take my beauty. Please don't take my beauty, because I want to marry a rich man in Athens and live a whole different life. And if you don't leave my beauty, then nobody will want me. That's why I'm going to take it, she says. And you, dear girl, are going to become a whole different creature. And she put her hand on Ari's head and she started to push down and down. And as she went, Ari's head was a black blob with 2 red eyes and then 8 hairy legs. Ari was the first spider. Now, girl, you will live in dark corners. People will fear you. All over the world, you will spawn more of yourself, and they will spawn more, and you will be in thousands all over the world. But everyone will despise you, because that's exactly what you deserve. And her mother fainted. And Athena put her hand on her mother's head and took her to a whole new place in a whole different town, somewhere else where she was a 17-year-old girl just starting her life all over again. And we know what happened to her. We see her every day, everywhere, in every corner. And to this day, everybody. Some people actually like spiders. I haven't met one yet. I don't fear them, but I don't particularly like them. Especially if I look up and there's one above me and they say, oh no, I'd be very uncomfortable. Athena had done her job. And when she left that village and went down that hill, she took that puddle with her. Why? Because she could. Now, the compassion that I spoke about at the beginning, that Momo and I are going to be discussing with you, where do you think that lies in the story? What would you think was the compassionate or non-compassionate side of that story? Did Athena show any compassion?
Well, my thought was, I don't know whether, my thought was that she was compassionate because she showed Anflut's and her character that it was very helpful in the world, or maybe not, you know,
Well, she wasn't very compassionate with Ari,
with how she.
Rihanna, who didn't. So, oh my, I forgot to tell you something. I knew I had Arachne. She changed her name from Marianne to Arachne. And that's what we know as the spider today. I forgot that. So she showed compassion to the mother. She took her right out of that life as if she had never been there and had that horrible daughter. But did Ariana show any compassion to anything or anybody? No. So I would say that's a story that was about somebody who did not deserve compassion and got her just deserts. Yeah.
I would beg to differ on one aspect.
Yes, mate.
If Athena had, I always think of the Greek gods, thank God they're not our gods still, because they weren't very nice gods, which they were. So if Athena had some compassion, she would have put a time limit on the daughter's punishment. So she'd have said 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, or 1 week. It wouldn't have mattered. But she would have, and that would have then what at the end of it, you have a beautiful girl with a beautiful talent with some wisdom and some passion. And that's getting close to, if you can find a perfect person. So I don't think Athena was very compassionate.
But
So
well,
in one way she was, in one way she wasn't.
but Athena's known for being quite strong and, you know, not giving very easily. So maybe if it had been one of the other goddesses, she may have
Well,
shown more compassion.
Yeah, like I
Athena
said,
was not likely to show compassion for that
you know,
girl.
like I said, I'm pleased that
Yeah.
they're not gods still.
Yeah.
Because
This is the whole thing about the story of the gods. Did they, didn't they? Were they, weren't they? Did they ever exist?
Well, Star
You know?
Trek had an answer for you, so didn't they?
And I like that because I will mention that now. In my story, I will say, perhaps if Athena had been more compassionate herself, things might have been different. But I doubt she would have been, because that's Athena's nature. She's the warrior. She's the one who
Well, yeah,
can't stand that kind
she's a
of.
bit hard-hearted as well, isn't she?
I think she was a bit, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think she probably still is. Thank you, Athena.
Just go up, check.
No.
Sorry, boys.
Yes.
And that's usually one of my estimates. What's my turn? You never know.
So it's also about compassion for animals. So my thought was lacking compassion for spiders in this room. So I might tell another story later on about spiders to give some compassions back with the spiders. Because nobody said, as when you ask somebody like spiders, nobody showed compassion for them. And I have a sweet little story for spiders, but I'm
Didn't really come up. I've got nothing against spiders.
Me neither. I'm
And if you buy a house in England with a thatched roof, you tend to buy 3,000 at the same time.
yeah.
Okay, so if you don't like spiders, don't buy a thatched roof in Shropshire. Okay, that's for certain. Okay.
So I brought the story from my home region. I just encountered a few weeks ago about a hepai. And we have some Germans here, and you shouldn't speak because you already know what a hepai is.
Yeah.
But do you know what a hepai? Hepai. Yes, it's a word. It's a how do you say that if you have it?
No, sorry, interruption again. I'm sorry, I don't know which country you come from.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm from Munich.
Munich.
Germany.
Okay, sorry, I didn't.
So it's near the mountain. So the story is like Munich is a little bit. I was outside here in Marrakesh and I saw the mountains, and I was like, "Oh, I'm home." It's like plain in Munich. If you go to the mountain, it feels like it gets a little bit bouncy before, but if you're away from the mountains, you see the mountains a little bit like here on the horizon, like a band of Alps. And before that, there is a stream that's the Inntal, the Inn, and the story comes from that Inntal. It's between Austria and Germany. And since I'm working with an Austrian teller, Helmut Wittmann, I learned the ancient Austrian. I'm beginning to learn some ancient Austrian tales because he's collecting it. But this one I found from another girl, which is a Lindlausen, and it's about a hepai. And the hepai is a toad. I'm not pronouncing it right because I had to learn that one. Do you know what a toad is?
Yeah, Kröte.
Kröte. Yes, so you got that. So telling stories in another language is experience for itself. So I'm gonna bring you down to the Inntal by singing you a song. If you want to sing it along, it's a yodler. You can do. Okay, you can learn a yodler. I learned it from Helmut Wittmann. It's more south in Austria, but if you want, you can sing. Di hui di hui ya, di hui ya, di hui ya, di hui di hui ya, di hui ya, di. Di hui di hui ya, di hui ya, di hui ya, di hui di hui ya, di hui ya, di. Di hui di hui ya, di hui ya, di hui ya, di hui di hui ya. So when you go to bed tonight, you might have a ohrwurm from the song, but you also might think about a toad living and down in the corner of the stairs when you go up the roof. Because I have a question for you about the toad, the hepai, and I'm gonna name it hepai because that's how it's said in the Inntal. I didn't know the word myself, hepai. There was a farmer's family, and they had a toad living down in the staircase somewhere in a little corner. And the toad, it doesn't look so. It has some blisters and blusters and goes like, no, it doesn't look good. No, I love kids. Yeah, that's good. I like spiders, so. But some people don't like toads, Yes, and they're going like, oh my God, there's living a toad. But the family was, no, it's okay. You can live there. They put some water to drink and stuff like that. And it's just sitting in the corner. And in the night, it wakes up and it goes on the roof not on the roof. I don't know how you call it.
Ceiling.
On the
Ceiling.
on the other side of the ceiling, yes, upside. And you hear the toad like, in the attic, yes, in the attic. And you hear the sound of the toad doing something upstairs. Some people can't sleep because of noises like that, but this family was, oh, it's just so toad, and go to sleep. But people were talking a little bit about the crazy family having a toad living there. Well, and I wouldn't tell you a story if there wouldn't be this one thing happening. And it was that the family was getting sick. Everybody. Only the farmer was not getting sick. They had a crazy, some kind of disease. They didn't know. The whole thing went full of blisters and bumpers and stuff like that. They had high fever, and the farmer was so worried because it was they couldn't recover. Weeks and go on, and he didn't go to his farmland anymore. He was just only worrying about his people. And then the fever got higher and higher, and he knew he's going to lose his wife. He's going to lose his children. They don't have much time left. And he thought it was the toad. Maybe it was the toad bringing the disease inside. So he put something in, like a basin, I don't know, and she put him, you're gonna do it. And the toad is going to go outside, and he's going, wah, 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 wah. And they go on a big pile of, not this poo, but the other poo, I don't know, how you call this one. And the toad was going upstairs, up this hill, Misthaufen, that's the one, you know, okay. And it goes like, whoa. And the farmer had just taken some wood and wanted to smash it on the toad. And the farmer looks at the toad, and he looks in the eyes, and he can't kill it. And he puts away the wood, and the toad goes, oh, you didn't kill me. I'm going to help. And the toad went back in farmer's house, and he went to everybody who was sick, the children and the mother. He licked every blister in the skin, and then he went back into the cot, and the fever went down, and the disease went away. And everybody helped on the farmer's land to recover, because the farmer didn't have time for doing that. And they loved the toad. They gave him water again, and they heard him in the ceiling, and you don't know how old a toad can go. But it's not so long, it's a few years, and the toad gets really, really, really old. And he was a happy toad. He got very, very old, and then he died. Of course, everybody dies, no? The family was sad. They brought the passed away toad outside, and they buried them. And they worshipped that he was there. And then they went back in their house, the farmer and the mother and the children. Sadly. Went up the staircase, had hid in one corner to live there. Now my question for you is, do you have a toad living in your house? It could be a cat, it could be a spider, it could be a thought that you think every day, and it spins like a golden sugar. And it's just there to give some water once in a while. Think about it tonight. Yes. Yeah, tell.
You wouldn't believe it.
Well, just before we start, we don't have toads living in our house,
Okay.
but we have frogs. We live in a very, very rural area. One of the worst things can happen to you when you have frogs living in your house is one gets into your welly boot. Right, and you have to start, you know, well, I've got his attention for once, right? Okay. And what you do is it happens to me about once every 3 or 4 years. Is you put one foot on and you put the other one on, and just as you bring it down, it moves just under your foot. Right? Which means that I go up about 15 feet in a straight line and bang my head on the wall. Because it will absolutely make you jump. And I've lived there number 40 odd years, and I've never squashed one yet.
Well,
No, no, never ever have I squashed one yet, but sometimes it's stopped my heart 3 or 4 times dead, absolutely.
yeah, they
So I
called
haven't
you.
got a toe, but we
Yeah.
do have frogs and we have lots of spiders.
I actually grew up.
Any Italians here? Sorry.
in my house.
Any Italians here? No. Well, in Italy, we have a tradition. The toad protects you, protects your family, protects your house. And I had the same toad in my house for 20 years, Antonio.
The top.
He had to have a name. He's real, Antonio the toad. And I was heartbroken when we went in the summer, which was 2021, and he wasn't there. Was it 21? The first time we could come back after COVID anyway. I was in the UK and went back to it. It's not Antonio. I was beside myself. Like you say, one day another little toad appeared. But my neighbour came out with her brush, ready to, and I was like, if you hit him with that brush, you are dead. It's just small. Antonio was a big guy, you know, and he had a character because when you saw him in the garden, especially the children, you know, my daughter, she would go and speak to him. "Hello, Antonio, are you having a good day?" And she would say, "Mum, he's having a good day." I said, "How do you know?" He smiled. I don't think so. But if she saw him smiling, he was smiling. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a whole different story, nothing to do with toads. But just to say that I love them, and I love frogs. And I used to go every summer. Here I go again. I was just going to tell the story, but let me tell you this first. And we lived quite near a pond where the frogs would spawn. And I was more excited about it than the kids. I would say, "Come on, we're going frog spawning." I said, "Come on, get your nets, we're going to." But they were quite happy once they had the tadpoles in the bowl and could watch them develop of their legs and do the whole metamorphosis thing. And then when they were frogs, almost just complete, we would put them in the garden. And to me, that was like heaven, you know, I just loved it. We've got more wildlife in the garden. Anyway, this is a whole different story. A young woman was walking in the sand, and the sun was shining and the sky was blue. And normally she would be very happy to hear this wonderful sound. She had her shoes in her hand, and through the wet sand, her toes would go. And normally she enjoyed that, but not on this particular day because she had a very heavy heart. She was carrying a secret. She was going to have to tell at one point, but how and where. She was worried. Her husband was at home with the children, and she wanted to go home and she wanted to tell him, but she couldn't find the courage. So she kept walking. And then she got her voice. She picked up a conch shell and she put it to her ear, expecting to hear the sea. But she didn't. "I'm glad you've picked me up at last. I've been waiting to talk to you. I've been waiting to tell you my story. When I was a teenager, my father warned me time and time again to stop doing what we were doing, my friends and I, because it was very dangerous, and if we were caught, we would be in real trouble." Because what I and my friends used to do was we would swim into the harbour and we would slice open the nets and set the fish free. And the fishermen never knew. They always assumed that the nets had been snagged. They never thought for 1 minute that they were being cut. This particular day, this particular mermaid, as she turned, having cut the net and tried to swim away, a tear was caught in it. And when it was pulled in, she was pulled with it, unceremoniously dumped on the deck. Fortunately for her, there was still enough fish in that net to almost cover her completely, so her tail was not visible. And she made the prayer. Every mermaid has the opportunity to have legs once in their lifetime to see what it's like to be a human. And now she had legs. The captain came. Who are you, dear? But she had a lump in her head where she'd hit the deck. Where have you come from? She pretended not to understand him. She spoke 7 languages. She didn't want to tell him anything. She wanted to keep her identity a secret. He wrapped his coat around her because, of course, now she was naked, except for her little shell bra. Not enough to cover her. Ding-a-ling. So he put the coat round her and he took her to his mother-in-law. His mother-in-law was a wonderful woman, and she looked after this girl. And she said to her, I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I'm glad you've come to me because my Johnny is coming home very soon. And I think you will like him, and I know he will like you. Well, all the while she was listening to this, the gig mother is the Scottish word for the mother-in-law. Never a misdemeanor was more fitting than the good mother for a mother-in-law. I was very fortunate. I had a great mother-in-law. She taught this girl about how to cook, about how to do things all in just 1 week. And then that was the day. I think it's today, she said, that Johnny comes home. And Ellen, as her name was Ellen, this Johnny that she's heard all these wonderful things about was about to come home. And sure enough, the next morning, she could hear all the kids. Johnny is back home again, ta-ra, ta-ra. Walking behind him in the street, Johnny's marching up the road, and Johnny's come back home again, ta-ra, ta-ra. And she runs to the door and she says, come, Ella, come and see my Johnny. When she saw him, he was so handsome, dark hair, big blue eyes, a smile that reached from ear to ear. And when he saw her, boom, 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 a heart that had never thumped before was thumping now. And when he touched her, he just touched her elbow lightly. She was in love. Well, actually, we know that's not true. She was in lust. And he was equally in lust. And the two got together. And I would love to tell you, they lived happily ever after. But that's not what happened. This is what happened. She knew. 7 years, that was all the time she had on this land, this earth, before going back to the sea. She decided that she would rather have those 7 years with John than nothing at all. And she would go back. When the 7 years was almost done, she would leave him and go back to the sea. And I would like to tell you that that's what happened and everything went along just fine. But that's not what happened. This is what happened. After just 6 months, she was pregnant. And even before that baby was born, she loved him. And just a few months later, when that baby boy, who was the living image of his father, was in her arms, what a dilemma. Well, she watched him for 6 years. She watched him grow. She absolutely was devoted to this child and to her husband. But if she, 1 more year, she would die. She would be gone. She would never see her son grow up. So one night when her husband was fast asleep by the fire and his son was in his lap, also asleep, she took a pin from her lapel and she pierced her little boy's heel. He was in his bare feet, and a little drop of blood fell, and she caught it in her hand, and it crystallized into a little red footprint, and a tear fell from her finger and landed in her hand and turned into a little pearl drop, and she put them in her pocket. And she kissed her baby boy on the forehead, her 6-year-old son, and she kissed her husband. And she walked to the back door in the kitchen, and she walked on down the beach, taking her clothes off as she went. And when she got to the sea, she put her feet in. She had never been in the water since that day. And the feeling, it rose up, right up through her body, up through her thighs. And when she was waist deep in water, there it was, her magnificent tail, every colour in the rainbow. She was home. But this wasn't home. She didn't have her husband. She didn't have her child. She swam to the big rock and she would watch. Day after day, she watched her boy play football on the beach. She watched him with his first girlfriend, walking hand in hand in the sand. She could hear in her head that. She watched him getting married in the little church. On the day that she left, she suddenly realized that her husband must have known all along that she was from the sea. Because when he realized his wife had gone, he took his son to the back door and they walked down the beach and he pointed to the rock. And whether or not he told him that his mother was out there in the sea, I don't know, so I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is, while this young lady is listening to this story in this conch shell, she's losing this fear now. And the last words the mermaid said to her were, "Oh, if your husband in yours, he will not be angry with you." And so she put on her shoes and she went home very quickly and she pushed open the kitchen door. She took that little red footprint on that petal and she put them on the mantelpiece before she walked into the kitchen where her husband was surrounded with their 6 children. One in the high chair, banging his fork on the table for food. Another one saying, "Me now, Daddy, me now, Daddy." And he turns and he says, "Where have you been?" She says, "I've been on the beach walking. I didn't want to come home. I didn't want to tell you, but I have to tell you. We don't need another mouth to feed, but I'm pregnant." And he said, "So what?" She says, "Well, it's another mouth to feed." He says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only need another 5 and I've got my football team. So now I can tell you, she did with her husband. And I don't know if they ever had the 11 children, but whatever they had, they lived happily. Thank you.
Give us some time to digest the last story. After such a long story, I would like to share two short stories with you. Catching up with the animals, I hope. So, and I promised you a story about the spider also, so I'm gonna start with the fish. Yeah, just know about fish in the beginning of the last story. So, do you know how the fish came into being? It's a very beautiful story. I think it's from an indigenous tribe from South America, and I don't know the name now, but it's a very nice story about the beginning of the world. Well, almost the beginning, because everything was there already, but there were no fish. Not at all. There was one old man sitting at the stream, at a little stream, dreaming of fish. He wanted to fish. Was dreaming of fish in different colors going into the water and making the water be full of life. There were no fish. But every day he went to this one little stream dreaming of fish. He went to be very old and older and older, still dreaming about the fish and the possibility to go fishing. And the mermaids then walk into there. Yeah, I don't know if he was dreaming about that also, but he was dreaming about fishing the fish. And still he got older and older. Then one day, he went out to the countryside and he picked flowers of all sizes and of all colors. And he picked flowers and flowers and flowers and flowers. And he brought them to the stream where he was wishing for fish all these long, long years. Then he let the flowers go into the water. Every single flower went to be one fish, another color and another size. And that's how the fish came into the world. That was my story.
Oh, that's a lovely. Voice of fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna see. I have it in my mobile phone. I wasn't planning for telling more stories than the head pie story because I thought there were very many
No,
and I
but
think
because we
for-
started so
for
late,
all,
we've got time to
um,
do another one.
Don't mind chucking one in it. And I noticed there's supposed to be 5 of you and there's only 2 of you, but
Yes.
it's up to you.
Yeah.
fellas.
Oh, no, we can do
Yeah,
one.
the other 3 tell them.
Well, it's,
There was 5 of you. wasn't there?
I
it
have
should
another
been 4
fish
of us,
story.
or the 2 of
It's
us.
very. Now I see different stories in here. A lot of stories like.
So Momo has Rona Barber, Sarah Oyodin, Kaja Hasla and Story Band.
Yeah.
Works first one.
Around is 7.
We were doing from 2 to 3 and then the story round now, so if you want to.
It is a story round, or is it first story?
I think it's that we were doing a workshop, if you like, we were talking about compassion. And then the story round.
Ah, you were doing a.
We were,
Ah, we
4
were
of
doing.
us were supposed to do this thing.
Oh, you're doing a workshop. You're not doing a storytelling.
Yes.
I thought you were doing a storytelling.
Oh, I've heard you yodeling and I'm ever so happy with what's been happening. You don't suppose you've got another 15 stories with yodeling in, have you?
No.
You want them to hear
Time
the.
allowed for anybody who wants to tell a story. What, darling?
You still want to hear the story about the
Yes.
spider?
Yeah.
I'm not finding it. I think it's the Kuroro. I don't know how to.
See, before you start, can I have a look at this?
Yes.
I bought one of these stuffed pianos, not as fancy as this is beautiful. And I couldn't work it because my thumbs are too weak, but that's fabulous. Honestly, I love the sound of it.
Invera, that's how I know that instrument. Invera.
Invera, it's called Samsula. In Germany, it's like this is a German factory. Like it's in fact, it was a German instrument maker who developed the kalimba, because the kalimba, that's a kalimba, and he developed this double thing about kalimba and drum, because he's putting it on a drum.
I don't know what you
So
call it.
that's the Hosima, and he's from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Hosima.
Well, that's
And,
all I got
and
was
it's,
the.
if you need to find it in internet, it's the Zamzula, because there's the
I
name.
didn't know it was German because in the UK they call it a thumb piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the general opinion.
My nephew lives in Germany with his family. He's been there for like 25 years or something. I must ask him if he can get me one like that.
Yeah, it's
I believe the origin is Afro-Persian.
it's the
I'd
kalimba,
say I'll say
it's
so.
central
Yeah.
Central
But
Africa.
I can see they made it, I haven't seen one like that before, and that sounded beautiful.
I said
And
it's
it
a,
matches
uh,
your
it's a-
voice very well, or your voice.
Transcultural.
Yeah, it's
It's a transcultural instrument.
I think it matches her.
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
I don't know if I could pull that off the same because you're very delicate.
I already married this instrument and that's so much storytelling with that. We could like go around the festivals with a box, I have it inside like a box with stories, different stories. And I have a sign that says every ticket is a story. And I go only with this. And then people take a story and then we kind of cuddle together. There's the festival around and I go like this. And so this is like my my little thing. I like the small storytelling.
Believe it or not, I came without my storytelling. I came without my storytelling.
Yeah, that's
code.
also
The one I have.
you kind of get energy.
Keys in every pocket.
Ah,
And the keys are keys for the story.
Oh, yeah, that's the same. Yeah, it's the same thing, a lot of them, and that was it's very nice for me because
I thought that was just your ordinary code.
yeah,
You go to shopping and stuff.
yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that coat as well.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah.
I would have nicked it, except it wouldn't fit me.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna be polite and not mention that bit.
It would be too big for me.
So it's a little bit strange to tell the story like that with a sunny background but we have January, don't we?
We are the storytellers, we
Yeah.
can imagine, tell us what they are.
Yeah, so no, it's just like for you to get you back to the Christmas time. Do you know Lametta? What Lametta is? You know what Lametta is because it's a German word, I think. Do you know what? Because if you don't know what it is, you're not going to. You should forget after that. But Lametta is something you put into the Christmas tree, which is like a.
It's like, it's a bit like aluminium foil and really thin strips.
Oh,
And
yes.
they come in a
Tinsel.
cluster, so it's like,
Tinsel.
yeah, something
Tinsel.
like that.
Tinsel.
Tinsel.
Yeah, like they put on the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Tinsel strips of silver paper.
Yes,
Very,
and
very.
it's very, very thin.
The fairies
and
come,
exquisite.
the fairies come and do it overnight. They sew it in and weave with it and they knit with it and sew with it. And it's very, very thin.
Yes.
So sometimes if you need it to be strong, it can pull the moon from one side to another. It's called tinsel.
Do you know a story of the fairies? They do this.
Yes, they do.
Where does the story come from? Where does the story come from with the fairies?
Right, it's a fairy story. It comes from under Robinswood Hill in Gloucestershire, because that's where all the king of the fairies lives. So that's, you always start there.
So you might have to tell the story because I know a Ukrainian version of the Lametta, and I have to learn the story. The other Lametta,
Yeah,
the
The
other.
Ukrainian one's the spider one. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, sorry.
That's the one I wanted to. Do we want to tell us about?
Yeah,
that?
I'm sorry, I'm
No.
sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
So
So I'm
they
gonna
didn't
make
tell
it
us.
short. No.
No, I'm sorry.
So this is but I want to tell the other story. I want to know the other. That's a story about.
No.
Is there also a story?
By heart.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah,
You're yes.
somebody told me,
It's absolutely-
somebody.
Yeah, but you,
I'd love
could
to.
you share it? You could maybe share it after that, so we can.
Go on, I'll tell you.
Okay, that's great.
This is your turn today.
No.
So we're changing
What she's told and somebody else is told.
So you're going to hear two stories about, now I need the English word for Lametta again, it's
Tinsel.
tinsel.
Tinsel. Tinsel.
Tinsel. Tinsel. Tinsel. Never heard this.
No.
Tinsel. I have to remember that at the end.
Well, I've never heard you open it before.
Tinsel. Tinsel. And I'm practicing tinsel and you forget about tinsel.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful little story from Ukraine where or Russian story, Ukrainian story. Stories don't know books. So
Beautiful, son.
I'll give you some of that.
Susie.
there was a mother with two children, and they didn't have much. They had almost enough to get fed, but not nearly enough to get fed. So they never had a Christmas tree. They couldn't put something beautiful and shiny on a Christmas tree because they are not even fed. So the children, they just dream of a Christmas tree. And they dream about that. Then there was a seed falling down. Right next to the door of this little cottage they were living in. There was a tree that got bigger and bigger and bigger. Absolutely beautiful tree that looked like a Christmas tree. And the children, they would give water to the tree. So it went to be as big as a Christmas tree. And one Christmas they asked us, please, let us put this Christmas tree inside and have a Christmas tree. They did. But they didn't have anything to glimmer around the tree. So we're sad. Do you know, the spiders, and they know everything. There are stories about spiders knowing so much from all over the world. You know, I know some stories, but I didn't tell them yet. And they had compassion with those children because they were so sad. So in the night, they went to the Christmas tree and they made this beautiful, beautiful nets all around the trees, did you ever look at a spider net very closely and you see sometimes there is some little water drops around them? It's beautiful. And they made a lot of beautiful nets in that tree. And then they vanished back in the corners. And when the first sunlight struck into the tree, these beautiful nets, spider nets, went to be golden and silver. So they had the most beautiful, shiny Christmas tree. So in the Ukraine, they make those little nets, webs. Thanks, webs. I'm learning, you know, spider webs, but they are out of golden strings. Well, and I heard that is also why there is lametta. I've lost the word. Tinsel, yes. But you know another story about that. I would love to hear it. Tinsel.
Well, if everybody doesn't mind, I'm happy to.
Yes, is it okay?
Of course.
Yeah, it's okay.
I have like.
I'm leaving because the meeting audience down at the tent. Right?
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna go help them out with some audience.
Oh,
I might see
okay.
in a minute, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna sort of like torn because I want to stay here, but.
Oh, well, it's a shame we won't hear you, but
Yeah, is the story around about compassion necessarily or anything?
not necessarily. No, this bit was compassion, but the tellers can tell whatever they want. He's going to tell a story about tinsel. But passionate
It's
about
gonna-
tinsel. You can't be
Of course you can, of course you can. You can, you know.
Define compassion, you know.
Okay, maybe it's-
Sorry, that was the compassion part.
Yeah,
What's
What's your first name? What's your mother?
Always find compassionate story.
I'd like you to hear.
No, John.
Have
John,
you
must
heard
be
Michael
John.
tell before?
I have not. No.
Well, I would like you to hear him tell, because I have.
Are you
It's
Michael?
all right.
Are you Michael Rule?
No, I'm Michael Rust.
Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Are you Michael Moore?
Michael who? Lots of people say that, don't they?
Well, there's
Go on.
another Michael, my brother, Michael Cairns.
Oh, right. Yes.
So if you go to where England meets Wales, now where England meets Wales, and most of the border was back in the day was called the River Severn, because there were 6 others. And there's another story about that. But as the story comes down to the estuary, it comes to the ancient city of Gloucester. And Gloucester is the county town of Gloucestershire. And it's just on the estuary, and there's a beautiful cathedral there, and it's stuffed full of people and a very good rugby union team. You don't think that I've got grandparents that were living there by any chance. But it's on the set of a load of hills called the Cotswolds. And up in the Cotswolds, there's a village. And the village is called Paradise. And back in the day, there used to be a pub that was called the Adam and Eve. When I was a little boy, you could go sit in Paradise with Adam and Eve and have an ice cream. And on between there and the village of Paradise, there's a hill, and the hill is called Robinswood Hill. There's Robin, and it's wood, and it's hill, Robinswood Hill. And underneath Robinswood Hill, everybody knows the King of the Fairies live. Now, the King of the Fairies, there's lots of stories. I could spend about 3/4 of an hour telling you the first one. And then there's lots of others that come, but they have competitions every Midsummer's Eve. All the men have beards, and the ones that are looked after properly, the beards get bushier and bushier and curlier, and the ones that aren't looked after in the farms, they get smaller and smaller. So when it comes to Midsummer's Eve, the ones we say your farm is not very nice and all the other things, right? Now, the one thing that we all know that all these scientists and things have got wrong completely is that you plant a stupid little bit of matter about that big, you stick it in the ground and a beautiful flower comes. Well, who told you that? That's the most stupidest thing you've ever seen in your life. You get something that's tiny, you chuck it there and you pee on it a couple of times, you put some water on it, comes on, and out comes a beautiful flower. What sort of bloody, that's rubbish, because underneath Robinswood Hill, there's a flower factory. And all the fairies, in the winter times, they make flowers. And when they come out, and every morning they come out and they just push them up a bit from underneath. And that's how they do it, you see. So sometimes if you're in the middle of the garden in the middle of the night and you see the flowers come up a bit, it's because the fairies are underneath, they're pushing it up and everything else. And they're feeding it and looking after it. And that's where all the flowers come from and everything else. Now, if you like the fairies and you don't like the fairies, when you die, if you die any time of the winter or in the summer, if the fairies like you, they will turn up on the day that you go to the churchyard. Now, the word for a churchyard and a funeral in that part of the world is a long walk and a cheese and onion sandwich. Because you've got a long walk with a coffin, and then you have a dinner, and everybody gets a cheese and onion sandwich after the you always have a cheese and onion sandwich. It's called cheddar cheese because that comes from Gloucestershire, right? So you're going for a slow walk and a cheese and onion sandwich in January. And if people like you so much, you'll look round and you will see that there's flowers in the churchyard. And when there's flowers in the churchyard in January, it's because the fairies liked what you've done in life and they've come to say goodbye. Mm. And so sometimes you will go in those parts of the world and there's only one flower that comes out in January in our part of the world. It's called the snowdrop. And the snowdrop is the harbinger of the spring. It's the first flower that comes out. And all the churchyards are all covered with snowdrops. So, and the time to have a lot of funerals is after Christmas and the families and everything else. People come along and they ask sometimes if they can wait in the summertime so they can be buried in the wintertime, and they will have the ashes and they will come along and they'll be there because they want the fairies to be at the time when someone said to me, we came from this world and we came to be an ancestor. Right. Now, the things they do in the down times on the Robinswood Hill is they make tinsel. Now, tinsel is you take 5 stars and you put them together and you pour the 6th star and you wind the five stars, the 6th star around the 5 stars, and you pull them. And as you pull them, the tinsel will get longer until the tinsel itself decides how long it has to be. Now, you can't then pull it any further. So sometimes you have short tinsel, and sometimes you can have longer tinsel. And so far, all the tinsel has been made is taken about that much out of the Milky Way, because there's lots and lots of stars up there. So you don't have to worry about there's going to be no stars, because every time someone takes 5 stars to make some tinsel, with the 6th one, 12 more stars turn up in the sky. So you don't worry about the stars disappearing, because they'll always be there. And in fact, they're always doubling up. And the reason you need tinsel is for once in a millennium, when the blue moon falls on the 29th of February. only then, so it's a full blue moon on the 29th of February, the moon is in the wrong place. And the only way to move the moon is for the fairies to go up the tinsel and move the moon a little bit, which is why the tinsel's been made out of the stars, right? So these scientists are just getting it all wrong, right? So you take a little bit of stuff and you stick it in flowers come up. And then they've got all these astrologers and they go, the moon is over there and we know where the moon is going to be and everything. But every time there's a full moon, a full blue moon, which is the one in the daytime, on the 29th in February, everybody turns around and goes, we've got to adjust something because now, you know, you have every 4 years, we have an extra day to keep the calendar right. And that was the only thing they could work it out to do, because they didn't take to the king of the fairies, because the king of the fairies would have told them just to move the moon back a bit. Now you wouldn't have had that extra day. Okay, so that's the story.
And
I don't know what you
I never knew how tinsel was made, but I know now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love
I always thought you knew nothing about nothing, woman. Right, sorry, I shouldn't do this. We're great friends. But absolutely, I've got a highest regard for her, which means I can be rude to her from time to time. But the ones I'm not rude to, I don't like. Be quiet. Okay, sorry, I should. I'll shut up. I'm sorry. Lynn would tell me off for saying that. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say.
Lynn, absolutely,
I mean, it's my
absolute
wife,
angel,
my
his wife. I mean, she's got to have been an angel to put up with that for all these years.
That's what I was thinking earlier as well, when you said you're married, I thought, whoa.
She's gorgeous.
I think my wife was very lucky to have me. Shut up. Right?
It was only my thought. It was reality. It was-
Anyway, so
If I'm with compassionate or not.
That's up to you, that's your story. You want to-
Tell the story that was.
Tell the story that wants to be told, good one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not rude for the compassion.
Yes,
Pick the other one on the chair.
Okay.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
Things look different from over here. All right, here we go. Once in India, there lived 4 wise people. The first wise person spent all of his time reading. Do you know the story?
No,
Oh, okay.
just that was a clue.
Yes, yes. That's good. I'm glad we got that good.
Shut up, woman.
We got the wrong thing. He read about very important things such as philosophy and
Wisdom.
wisdom and
Knowledge.
knowledge. The second wise person spent all of his time
Reading.
reading. And he too read about very important things such as animal husbandry and
Nature.
nature and
Geometry.
geometry. The third wise person spent all of his time
Reading.
reading. He too read about very important things such as education and
Language.
language and medicine. And the fourth wise person spent all of her time
Reading.
reading. Well, I should say that she spent half of her time reading, and the other half of her time, she went out amongst the people. Now, she read about very important things too, but the other half of her time was out amongst the people. And she would go to the farmer that raised crops, and she would say, how is it that you can raise your crops without chemicals when others cannot? Because he knew the secrets of organic farming. She would go to the person who raised animals for meat, and she'd say, how is it that your meat is so tender and juicy? Much juicier than the others, because she knew the secrets of animal husbandry. She would go to the person in the village who was a mentor for young people, and she'd say, how is it that the young people trust you when they do not trust others? but she knew the secrets of psychology. Now, the first three wise person, they thought that she was a fool for wasting her time going out amongst the common folk. But this is how it was. For many years, were the first three wise people spending all of their time reading, and the fourth one spending half of her time reading and half out amongst the people. And after many years of this, the first three wise people, they decided that it was time to finally put their knowledge to the test, to prove to the world once and for all that they were the wisest of all. Because they were kind and, yes, compassionate people. They invited the fourth wise person along. And so they gathered together the books and the tools and the chemicals, and they headed off to village, trying to see if they could find something that would put their knowledge to the test. Until finally they had the answer. They followed the instructions by following a path, looking for a test that they were told would be there. A tree. They were looking for a tree. That underneath their tree there would be their test. But all they saw were bushes, no trees, just empty landscape. But they followed the path as they were told to do, and sure enough, finally there was a tree. Underneath that tree, there was their test. It was a pile of bones. And the first wise person said, "Ha ha, well, certainly we will be able to prove to the world once and for all that we are the wisest of all. I will take these bones and I will make a beautiful skeleton of a tiger." And so he got out his books and his tools and his chemicals, and he started to piece together those bones until from the very tip of the nose to the very tip of the tail, there was a perfect skeleton of a tiger before them. Now, certainly no one will be able to argue with us that we are the wisest of all. Is that not true, my brother? The second wise person stepped forward. "Yes, you have done a fine job indeed, but I will do one better. I will make a perfect replica of the tiger that once lived." And so he got out his books and his tools and his chemicals, and he started to layer on tendons and ligaments and muscles and fur and eyes and whiskers from the very tip of the nose to the very tip of the tail until there was a perfect specimen of a tiger before them. Certainly nobody will be able to argue with us now that we are the wisest of all. Is that not true, brother?
That's absolutely true.
Yes. So the third wise person stepped forward. "Yes, you have done a fine job indeed, my brothers. But I am going to do one better. I am going to bring this tiger to life." And the fourth wise person said, I don't think that's such a good idea, bringing to life a tiger that's standing right in front of us. Nonsense. It'll be a great scientific and technological discovery. We must work quickly, for we have to finish our work before the day's end and the sun is going low in the sky. And so he got out his books and his tools and his chemicals, and he started to breathe the breath of life into that tiger. And slowly the tiger's eyes began to blink, its whiskers began to twitch, it started to sway back and forth, its tail switched back and forth, and in a great flurry of dust, he ate up all three wise people. Now you might be wondering what happened to the fourth wise person. Exactly. She climbed the tree. And she watched as this tiger ate all three wise people and licked its paws after a fine meal and wandered off into the distance. And it was only then that she climbed down that tree and went back to her village. And she took with her the greatest wisdom of all. And that, my friends, is the wisdom of common sense.
I'll take a bit of common sense, it's done common sense.
Yes.
So-
I loved that it was the woman who had the common sense.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
I don't usually get that in stories.
So we're gonna just leave, it's all right, we're gonna lose this, right, okay.
Wonderful story.
Yeah.
But she was compassionate with everybody, like asking for the farmer and stuff like that, but she wasn't compassionate to her.
Yeah.
Her fellow men, you know.
They didn't listen to her.
They didn't listen.
Yeah, they didn't listen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
they
they
didn't
didn't
listen to her.
ask or whatever. It's funny, I heard that story with a mum who had 3 or 4 boys that were absolutely putting her in that, no, annoying her because they were arguing all the time. He's the wisest and most clever,
Well,
send them away.
Say that again?
It's just another version of that story that I heard, and it's just about 4 brothers who went into the world and they all did things, and the youngest is actually not doing medicine or whatever, but just talked to the people and took the wisdom for the world, and then he survived.
Why don't you do that?
No.
Lion.
Why don't you share one of those sort of stories? A very safe place. Yeah. Why don't you do it? Do it for the first time. Tell your first live story at the storytelling festival. Come on,
Go for it.
let's go for it.
If you want. So now I'm blank.
Well, no is a no, come on.
That's what happens.
So by the
This
way,
is why I
you said you
have
love
my,
how.
my repertoire list in my phone, you know, because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, me neither. That's why I have a book
I
on
get
my
blank
list.
all the time and somebody's still going to say, tell a story, tell us, I'm like, I don't know any story. Any story that, then I have
Yeah.
my repertoire.
No, but you know the stories. You told the stories before. I never told the stories.
But this is the thing. It's something
I can
you think
understand.
you know the story. You don't need to know the story. You only need to know how it starts and how it ends.
Yeah.
Honestly, Mum,
Yeah.
because a storyteller,
Yeah, that's true.
we don't say a beginning, a middle, and an end. We say a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah, no, I'll go.
Yes,
That has a direct relationship. That has a direct relationship to common sense and how much you've had to drink.
Absolutely.
Because how big the muddle is.
How much false courage there
Oh, yes.
Yes. But you know,
That's what I was thinking in the square and around here, because guys don't drink and they still dance a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would never happen when I worked in Ireland, and I said, you know, as a South therapist, and now, you know, would you not just dance a bit? And they said, you know, if you give me 4 pints before, I would dance.
but you did.
I chatted to them. They didn't dance without the pints. Yeah, but the dancing.
Oh, yes.
No, well, that's just being, yeah, that's just being us.
Yes,
so
See you
it's-
next
look,
time. No, you're very welcome.
And by the way, I believe that the original family had format. I learned it as a woman. And it's in my book.
Yeah. So,
You finished on it?
Yeah.
No, can we have another couple of stories?
You want to?
Katarina?
No, I'm not storytelling. I'm not, I'm only a listener.
This is ridiculous. I have to get you two guys together to tell a story one after the other. There's nothing worse than the story that wants to be told.
Well, that's
There's
true,
not
actually.
being set
Yeah.
free.
But I don't.
I felt really safe here until now.
well, I'll tell you what, why, I'll
But
tell you what.
also, no, it's.
Oh, no, right, I'll tell you what, while you're thinking about it, I'll tell a little short one, and you can think about it, and if you want to stand up or sit down and tell one after, that's fine, right? There was a great big tidal wave from the west of Ireland, and it started off right in the Atlantic, and it came bombity, 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 bomb, and it hit the west coast of Ireland, and it picked up 100,000 starfish, and it put the whole lot straight onto the beach. Well, the Irish went over, and they went to the Prime Minister and the President of Ireland came all the way over, and he looked, and there was 100,000 starfish on the beach all the way across. And he said, there's nothing we can do. The task is too big. Whatever we did, we couldn't make a difference. And this old lady came along. And then when you say an old hen wife, hen in the Welsh language and some of the Celtic languages means old. So what you're really saying is old wife. But when you say an old hen wife, that word hen means wisdom, because these old wives, they're called old wives' tales, because these old wives knew a bit. That's why they're called old wives' tales. So one of these old ladies And she was beautiful early on in her life, but now age had come onto her shoulders, and she turned round and she was croaking a bit, and she looked at all the great and the good in Ireland, and she walked over to the beach, and she picked up one starfish and she threw it into the sea. And she looked up and she said, "Made a difference to that one."
Yay!
Look it up for a minute. Made a difference to that one.
Yeah.
And everybody looked at her and they all went down to the beach and everybody picked up one, said, "Made a difference to that one." And sometimes a grain of sand will cause a sand dune.
No, that, I just remember when I stayed sitting, because I, just tried that one. So, until last year, I lived in Ireland on the west coast, like in the most beautiful little village, and it was like, it's right by the sea. And there's lots of these old like churches and stuff like woods. And one of them was a little monastery or so. And the story I found the backyard of a friend who had the local painter painting a mural on her barn of a story that happened right next to the barn at a bridge. And the story was written out, and I thought it was like so nice of her to just preserve an old story of the village that had to do with that bridge. And the story goes that once when there was still an old monastery, like a tiny monastery, like just an abbot and a few monks. And one of the monks was summoned to the abbot one day, and because he had committed a minor sin, like, no one really knew what it wasn't a big one, but it was. And he said, like, you better go, if you want to save your soul, you better go down to that river and stand in the river for the night with your staff and repent. But yeah. And in the morning, if there's blossoms on your staff, you are forgiven. God has forgiven you. The monk thinks that, like, it's not really what I wanted to do. It's back in freezing, but I go down to the river and I stand in the river. So he does that. And he stands there all night, and over the river is a bridge, like this old stone bridge. And the local thief, cattle thief, just drives his stolen cattle over the bridge, and in the full moon you can see the monk standing in the river, like with his staff. And yeah, so do you mind me asking, what are you doing there in the middle of the night there in the river? And the monk said, "Oh, I committed it wasn't bad really, but I committed a sin, and now I'm here to repent. And there's blossoms. I've done a good job in the morning." So the cattle thief thinks, he has to do that just for a minor sin. I better get down in there as well. And he goes down into the river with his staff and stands there. Two of them, they're not talking all night, but they're just standing there in the river. And then the sun comes up, and the monk looks at his staff, and there's noticing that there's a monk. Then he turns over to the thief, and his staff is in full bloom. That's the story.
So I have to say, like you're a storyteller, but you are a working storyteller. A story.
Well, I tell you what, I'm as old as I bloody am nowadays, and I'm well old. It's not often I hear a story I've heard before, and you managed to do that.
I do have.
Story and storytelling festival.
Yes.
I'm only
You can.
another artist. I'm only
Never say it.
painting or something.
Right, I hate the word only and just.
Yeah.
So when people say I'm only something, or I'm just a mother, or I'm only a baby grandma, or
yeah.
only a housewife, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, I always stop them and say, you never say the word only, and you never say the word just.
Yeah.
I am the best artist anywhere in the world. And I'm best 3 times better than everybody else in all of Morocco. That's how you start the conversation. You don't go only anything. But anyway, sorry, I'll shut up again.
Is it kids? Are you a storyteller?
No, I'm not, no, so I'm just, I'm
Interesting.
hey, listen.
Yeah,
Just here yesterday and today, so I'm enjoying this.
Where are you from?
Basically from London, but I was living elsewhere for a long time.
Okay.
Right.
I've never been to elsewhere. Have you been to elsewhere?
No.
I'll give a very short story. I'll tell it.
It's okay.
So,
Another first timer.
so I'm prompted because I don't know among you all, have you ever had a family story that gets repeated over and over? Has there been a particular family story?
Yeah.
Well, in my case, my father, every time like Christmas or any other festivity, yeah, he would repeat this family story. And what do you all do? You know, he says, have you heard this? And you say, no. And you'll listen politely. And it's a kind of interesting sometimes to look at whatever the family story is. Now, this family story is particularly interesting because we've all heard of the Titanic, haven't we? And they're sinking of the Titanic. And that does mean quite a lot to us. We all have something that comes up about that. Maybe the Titanic was supposed to not to be destructible, you know, and yet it went down, you know, what a tragedy. But there was but this family story is about a particular captain of a boat, yeah, that also went down. And in Britain, it's quite famous. It was called the SS Great Britain. And it was at the time the largest, so this is before the Titanic, this was the largest, let's say, boat of its time, made of iron, yeah. And it wasn't soon after one of its first voyages, it came out of Liverpool, with supposedly this distant relative as captain, came out of Liverpool, and out of Liverpool, there is just one rock, which everybody knows about, and it hit this one rock, yes? So this is always the story we're given. And I think a lot of it is about interpretation. So my dad would always say it certain ways, and then I've looked at it other ways. Now, he would say that probably one of the reasons it went down, yeah, was because the boat was all iron. And so that would have affected the compass. So at the time they used compasses for guidance. So it probably wasn't really his fault that it hit this rock, yeah. But I also, subsequently, I asked my father, well, what happened to this distant relative? Well, obviously, he had to disappear for a couple of years, yes. But it is interesting, he did still have a life after that, because later on there was a certain war that went on. So anybody that knew anything about ships or boats was needed. So he did end his days as an admiral, yeah. So, which is quite something, yes, yeah. So my view of the story, I mean, this is what is interesting. I take that family story, there can be tragedy. But the great thing is people can survive after tragedy. You know, these issues can happen. You can obviously go off course. So that's how I viewed that story and taken that story on. Yes? Okay.
I love his first venue, he had sunk the boat. And that's a brilliant story, Sally. That's great. So, hi.
Hi.
I don't know your name.
Oh, my name's Katrina.
Katrina, yeah. And you're a storyteller, Katrina?
I am a storyteller.
Yeah.
But I'm not part of
Yes.
the,
And I said with the whole house.
You're not what?
I'm not part of the people that are telling stories here.
How do you,
Yes.
do you live here?
No,
No, but you've come for the festival of storytelling.
yes.
Share us a story.
I just arrived, so.
So I'm just, sorry, I've had a lovely hour, so but I'm
Yes,
going to
we
go and
have
sit
2
outside
minutes.
and
Okay.
sit in the sun, have a cup of tea. And so on.
See you later.
Oh, Nick, you'll sit then.
Absolutely, it's
Away.
nice to see
See
you.
you, mother.
Thanks for your help.
No problem.
It's been a lovely.
I've got time for two.
Very good. Maybe there's.
Well, I love the yodel. That's my favourite gem.
Katrina, if you feel like telling at some point, please.
Yeah, I
do.
will, Jen. I just thought maybe I'd sit here for 5 minutes.
Yes, didn't have to be right away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We'll give you 5 minutes.
The timer's on.
Yeah. So I've got another true story tellers who've just joined us anyway, so there's plenty to tell. Well, have you got anything else you want to say, darling?
Is someone need of a story? Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit funny, but okay. I just thought about a story
Who's
because
working on this one?
did you, no, did you, I made a Beobachtung, can you help me? Made an observation, and I don't know if you also did have this observation that we have a lot of bearded men.
Yes.
Did you? You just arrived, didn't you? Did you just arrive?
Yeah.
Another one of those bearded men.
Yes, they're all over the place.
So I have a story about bearded, some type of beard, okay? And about fish, because we have a lot of fish and we're still with the animals. So, I don't need my instrument. I was like, I don't know, this doesn't get lost today. Like, it's like, I have some, maybe I need something in my hands. I don't know. So I'm gonna tell you a story about two fish. This from the Turkey. So the two fish were the best friends you can imagine. They were doing everything together. They were beautiful fish. It was one beautiful, beautiful fish. You can imagine any fish in one. And the second fish was a fish with a golden beard. And the fish with the golden beard and the other beautiful fish, they were the best. But the fish without the beard, he woke up one morning and his friend was gone. So his friend with this beautiful golden beard was gone, and he was swimming all around asking any fish, did you see my friend? Did you see my friend? No, did you see my friend? Did you?
I didn't.
Did you? You did.
No.
Did you see my friend? No. Did anybody see my friend? Did you see my friend? Did you?
No, so.
So you know what a fish does. If he doesn't know where to go, he goes down, down, down deep in the sea to find the octopus. The octopus, he's a magic being, and he probably knows where he is. So he asked the octopus, I can't find my friend. And the octopus says, I know where he is. He was caught. Oh, and I mixed up the story. Ah, that's interesting. So now you have to like turn around everything. It was the fish with the golden beard asking for his other fish. Of course. Why didn't you say anything? I said, oh my God, she's doing wrong. So whatever. It was, she could have helped me. Well, she knows the story. So, however, the fish with the golden beard was looking for the other fish. Oh, you can turn a beautiful fish. It's the beautiful fish. And the octopus said, well, the beautiful fish was caught by men. He was brought into the city. He's gone. Oh, dear. That's exactly what he said. Oh, dear. And the octopus said, but I can help you. You can get the shape of men for one day, but you have to get back into the water when the sun goes down. Sure, of course, you would have known that, like, that's what octopus said. So he said, yes, I want to find my friend. So he kind of passes away, and the morning comes, and he finds himself being a man with a beautiful, beautiful golden beard. And he walks through the landscape. It is a little bit snowy, Turkey, it does snow here. And then he goes to the city, and he was looking for his friend everywhere. He couldn't find him. He was looking in the fish market, and he was looking everywhere, and the sun was getting over the midday, it was going down slowly. And finally he saw a bucket in a fish store, and he saw his beautiful friend inside. So he went and said, "Oh, can I please have this fish?" "Well, yes, if you can pay it." "Please, let me have this fish." And the man selling the fish looks at him and says, "Oh, you have a beautiful beard. You could pay with your beard. Would you pay with your beard?" "Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yes.
Yes.
You can get a new one next week.
Yes, okay. Now, this was a magic beard. I was asked a question of us. But he shaved up his beard. He took a scissor, gave his beautiful golden beard to take his friend in the bucket, and he ran back. The sun was going down. And the last minute, both of them went into the water, and they went to be fish. 2 fish. Beautiful fish. But did you ever see a fish with a golden beard? Well, that's why I gave it away to his friend.
I'll tell one last wee story and then we'll hand it over to these guys that have just arrived. I've got another storyteller and another storyteller. Look at this. So, you ready to tell one after? Good, okay. Well done. I'll tell you the story of Duncan. It's quite an unusual story. I called it the beige man because that's what he was. He was utterly beige. This man had no colour. He wore a beige suit, he wore a beige shirt, he wore a beige tie, he wore beige shoes, the same shoes for 30 years, not the same pair, but every time he renewed them, he bought the same thing. He was completely colourless. And you wouldn't be surprised to know that he was an accountant. Apologies to any accountants in the audience, because that was just suited his nature perfectly. And he was married to Deirdre, and she was a female version of him. She looked, beige. She had no colour. If you went into her wardrobe, there would be beige cardigans, beige skirts, beige blouses, nothing else, beige shoes. They were a very colourless couple. And his routine was exactly the same every day. He would go into his office from 9 to 5. He would have his sandwiches made by his adoring wife, Deirdre. They would be exactly the same. 4 sandwiches of ham and cheese. That's my wee brother, by the way, he's heard it all before. Ham and cheese cut into 4, yeah. And he would go out and sit in the park bench, the same park bench every day at 12 o'clock, and he would eat these sandwiches. Except he didn't eat all 4. He kept one. And when he would go home in the evening, he would take that last sandwich out of his lunchbox, break it up, and feed the birds in the garden. Well, he did this day after day. Until one day, he was sitting on that bench, and he saw some movement out of the side of his eyes. And he looked, and it was a grub, a little fat grub that was struggling and trying to break free. And he watched it for a little while. And he suddenly saw the birds circling. And he thought, I can't leave that little grub there. One of them will have it for lunch. So he put it in his lunchbox and he took it back to his office. And when he got back to his office, he put it on his desk. And he looked at it for a while. And he couldn't resist it. He took a paper clip and he opened it out. And he started to pick these little threads that were holding that grub together. And at 3:30, excuse me, just as it did every day at 3:30, his phone rang. And it was Deirdre. Hello, dear, how are you? I'm fine, darling, how are you? Are you having a good day? Yes, I'm having a good day too. I'll see you at tea time. All right, dear? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I want to tell you, though, something happened. Something happened? What happened? He said, I found something in the park, a little grub that was struggling and fighting to get free. So I brought it back to the office, and I thought I should help this little grub. Duncan, tell me, you didn't try to set it free. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. Oh dear. Duncan, bring it home. Yes, dear, I'll bring it home. Now, Duncan. But dear, it's 3:35. I don't finish until 5. Duncan, you're finishing early today. Bring that grub home now. We've never been spoken to like that before. He was absolutely horrified. Was this his Deirdre? What did she turn into? But he did as he was told. And he had to walk past the boss's office, the glass-fronted office. Duncan? Yes, sir. Where are you going? I'm leaving a little bit earlier today. Deirdre needs me at home, sir. The first time in 20 years you're leaving the office early. I think we can allow that. Yes, thank you, sir. I'll see you in the morning. When he got home, he forgot to feed the last sandwich to the little birds. It was still in the lunchbox with the grub. Deirdre was at the doorstep. Come on, she said, and they went to the kitchen. And he takes the lunchbox and he opens it and he puts the grub on the table. Do you not know anything? Do you not know what you're supposed to do? Oh, I give up. I give up. I'm sorry, dear. I had no idea. I thought I was helping because it was fighting and struggling. And you know why it was fighting and struggling, Duncan? Well, yes, dear, obviously, it wanted to break free. And yes, it will break free eventually when it is strong enough. Ah, yes. How does it get strong enough, Duncan? Building its muscles, struggling to break free. You know what's in that grub, don't you, dear? Yes. What's in the grub? A butterfly. A butterfly with huge wings, 10 times the size of its little body. It needs the strength to be able to fly. I'm sorry, dear, I didn't know. Maybe it's not too late. Fortunately for you, Duncan, it's not. She took out her sharpest needle and her finest thread, and she stitched that little grub back together. And then they watched for the next 5 days. This was the child they'd never had. They watched as that little grub built up its muscles and built up its strength. And on the day that it broke free, it was night time. It was 11 o'clock at night. And Deirdre and Duncan were in bed, fast asleep. And they never witnessed the finest part of that miracle. They never saw the final thrust that broke him free. But he was in the kitchen. And when they came downstairs in the morning and saw him, oh, Duncan, look, our little boy has broken free. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it beautiful? Oh, they were so excited. They were beside themselves. It was wonderful. And then she looked and she said, but we have to do the right thing, dear. What's the right thing, dear? We have to open the window and let him free. We must let him go. All right. Okay. They opened the window and the butterfly flew off. He turned to Deirdre and he took her by the hand and they went back upstairs to the bedroom. Now, I don't know what happened there, but that's none of our business. I can only tell you it took 3 days to wipe the smile off his face. And the next day, when he was in the park, eating his sandwiches, something out of the corner of his eye caught his attention. And he turned and looked, and that beautiful butterfly was there. And it came up, right up to Duncan, and flapped its wings in front of his eyes to say thank you. Hi, Jim.
Hi. James, Lucas,
You tell us something.
no, it's a program.
All right, okay, carry on.
Inside, that's all right.
Was actually sitting there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
No, but she's a.
Oh, wow.
Stories.
Got the passport.